It's absolutely correct. Of course, it has been shrinking, and it's missed out for several things. I think one of the issues is that as South Africans, we're not the best salesmen of South Africa Incorporated, and there's been a lot of noise, political and otherwise, around South Africa. So we haven't done a good job there. But also circumstances in South Africa also have been difficult for investing in the industry. Because of the rand, strength of the rand, we've had a very strong rand the last while. But having said that, I think there's quite a lot of interest that's picking up right now on South Africa. And, we look at junior companies, Australian companies actually coming to South Africa and looking at our mineral rights and saying, maybe there's something here. And therefore they're prepared, I guess their level of tolerance in sort of risk level is showing that they're a little bit higher. But I think overall that's correct. But I think we're over probably the worst of that sort of impression of, South Africa's not been a good place to invest in.
What can South Africa do better, and how can the country get a hold of foreign investors?
Certainly a big issue is managing the mineral rights, managing the whole perceptions around that, being able to operate a more transparent process where you can walk into an office and find out who's got what mineral rights, and I mean that must be a much more transparent process. There are various countries that have done a good job on that. It does take time to do it, but there's some countries, Papua New Guinea, where we operate, it's a very transparent process. You can go into the office, you can find out who's got what mineral rights very quickly, and therefore you're able to sort of focus your exploration efforts, if that's what it is, or you're able to actually determine the tenure, who owns the tenure.
And what must investors think when they come to South Africa and find out that mineral rights have to be applied for by hand?
Yeah, I mean, they must have a fairly dim view of it. I think, that sort of process has not covered itself in glory, and is certainly one of the areas that needs jacking up. And I think the minister would probably agree with that, that she's doing a lot of work there, and I think there will be vast improvements going forward.
How important is clarity in mining regulations here?
It's an ongoing process, but it needs it all the time. It's something that you need to bank. It's something that when you go into a country and you've got certain tenements, you need to be able to say, we've got the rights here and they're not going to get taken away from us. And wherever you have a country where that's a possibility, the mining goes through a shaky period.
What about electricity? Eskom has said it can't guarantee supply this year, and also costs are going to go up year after year after year. How much of this is a problem for miners like yourself?
Yeah, I think on the supply side, this is a difficult area, and of course we don't manage electricity, but we do manage our consumption. If you go back to 2008, where there was a big crisis and we were all cut back as miners down to 90% of our previous allocation, I think most companies will show that they've actually cut down quite a lot more than that. In Harmony's perspective, I think we're about 28% less than pre-2008. So we've done a lot of saving. I mean, this is the engineers getting stuck into how do we save electricity, how do we operate things differently, how do we do things much differently in the way of saving electricity. So major customers, I think, have done a huge amount of work in saving electricity. So I think as mining companies, we would say, we've done a fair amount to secure supply going forward. On the cost side, yes, there are going to be increases in costs, and we need to continue saving electricity, using less in peak periods and so on and so forth. I mean, that's what we all need to do. And this is, again, the whole of South Africa, not just the mining industry. But the cost is certainly going to be increasing. We use a lot of electricity. We have underground mines which require cooling and ventilation, hoisting of material and so on and so forth, and we do use a lot of electricity.
How are you struggling to keep down your costs, particularly with labour, which is 54% of your overall costs?
Well, it's understanding your costs is the most important thing, and as Harmony we've been able to actually demonstrate that we can actually treat a lot of our costs variably. You know, if you look at some of our detail operations, and our only one operation which really had a bad quarter was Soweto. Yet if you look at the operating costs, we managed to trim a lot of costs out there, and that's a case of, you know, treating these things as we have to save costs. Where do we save it? Save it on capital, save it on operating, you know, making sure people go on leave at the right time. All those sort of things add up and enable you to manage your costs better. So it's really understanding your costs and being able to really get the management team to understand where they can do savings and what they can do. But longer term, you know, the wage negotiation is coming up. I can't predict any outcome from that, but you know, we've been under cost pressures for a long time in the gold industry, and so we get used to actually operating and running our costs and trying to save areas. And some of these saving areas are actually investing in better infrastructure or more efficient infrastructure as well to get the longer term cost benefits.
Bearing in mind all we've said, what is your outlook for the next 5 to 10 years?
I can't really talk for the whole industry, but I can talk for Harmony. I think we have some great mines. We're busy commissioning those mines. We're certainly going to have some of the best gold mines in South Africa. There's no doubt about that. We've invested a lot of capital in getting those mines going, in sinking the shafts and equipping them, in making sure they're really world-class mines. And so in the next 5 years, you know, we're going to have a fairly stable production, probably from South Africa, in the order of 1.5 million ounces plus per annum. And that's the sort of rate where we're going to be. You know, we've closed all the operations that have to be closed. We're now into building up the production from these commissioning assets. So I think gold mining is still going to be a good place to be in South Africa.